Ooh, did Gangnam Style put out a new song?
Subway references, phallus getting wet,
Phallus?
walks down memory lane, voyeurism, and so much more today. I'm not sure I can make that joke in the first minute of this video. Join my Patreon. Hey everybody, I'm Chris, just in case I got demonetized. Hey everybody, I'm Chris and I'm reviewing every episode of The Office, and today we're looking at promos.
Ah, damn it!
Lots to talk about, so we're gonna jump right in.
I understand nothing.
Our cold opener reminds us that this episode was filmed in 2013 with Phyllis listening to 50 Shades of Grey.
It's porn.
Yeah.
Kind of grossing out all of her fellow coworkers in the bullpen, to which they then try to incite Andy into doing something about it. To which Toby puts the kibosh on because
she's allowed to have feelings of sexual arousal. Doesn't become a violation until she physically acts on it.
which is kind of like allowing Air Bud to play basketball.
Check in your rule book, but you won't find anything in there that says a dog can't play.
He's right. Ain't no rule said the dog can't play basketball.
Dwight, very familiar with how to handle randy animals.
Goat on chicken, chicken on goat, couple of chickens doing a goat, couple of pigs watching.
Takes it upon himself to cool Phyllis's jets.
What the hell?
It's okay, guys. She's no longer horny.
And he then takes the iPod Touch only to engross himself in the content. The meat of this one begins with The Office excited to see the promos for their series being released soon. Engaging from the copy on screen, they broke up the 8 years that they filmed these people, which may or may not be so much more than what we actually got in our version of The Office. Because later Brian says this.
How much stuff you got?
Pretty much everything.
And Pam says this.
So we basically had no privacy for 10 years.
And he does not, he's like, well, it's somewhere in. So they got so much more footage. And I remember a long time ago, I said something along the lines of, you know, they had to be filming more than what we see. So was the crew in every single day? And what we got was just one 30-minute episode of Michael Scott shenanigans. And the other days were boring, or was every day in the office like this? And they just had to pick and choose whatever they had. Doesn't really matter. It's just fun to think about. But what the documentary that aired on whatever this is, which may be PBS, I don't know, guys. Kevin does say this.
Are there documentary groupies?
And then we do know that later there is groupies. Either way, what we do know is that they break up the 8 years of filming into a 9-part mini-series, which, like, how did they do that? Was it 2 hours of every season of what we got was The Office? So season 1 and 2 hours, actually kind of easy to do. Season 2 and 3 and 4 and beyond are just a movie of The Office? Or was it just like 9 30-minute episodes in which they just consolidated an entire season of what we got into 30 minutes, which I feel like I could do, but also not do it justice. Like, it would only work. It's like abbreviating a word, you know, it loses its meaning if you don't really know what the full word is.
YOLO!
What?
And then also later we find out that there's a Danish version. Does PBS actually do overseas affiliates? Turns out they do. After the second promo is released, the staff are shocked to see that the footage that they previously all maybe thought was gonna be kept private is not going to be private. Big reveal. This is exemplified in this moment with Angela.
I didn't know they were filming then.
But I don't think they thought that we would be still closely analyzing and thinking about this series as much as what we have in the last, 11 years at this point. And I say this because we all know that Angela looked at the camera crew. For if you were binging this series, you just watched that episode last week. So it's still fresh in your mind, but it doesn't really matter because it's a good moment. I love the resolution of this moment where they all turn and look at the camera.
They were filming all the time, even when we didn't know it. Oh my God.
Do they film us at night when we're sleeping?
Yes, Erin.
And that builds the main drama for this plotline, which explores the fallout from the airing of these promotions. The staff have a secret meeting, which is also being spied on, and everyone takes turns lamenting the ramifications of this reveal.
I thought Terry knew about Cynthia.
She does, but neither of them know about Lydia.
Oh, wow.
What'd I tell you about building forts in my warehouse?
Pam's assigned by New Jim to go talk to Brian. Meanwhile, Dwight pulls Clark into his relationship for some reason with Esther, whose father is wanting to split the difference on a tractor. Which, I mean, I assume these kind of deals happen, I guess. But the father is pretty blatantly treating his daughter like a dowry for allowing Dwight to, be with his kid. And that's kind of weird. But also, it's very Schrute. But it's also weird because they just started dating. They've been on 3 dates. It's not the right time to start a tractor deal. That's like a 5-date kind of thing.
You would be a great one to buy an auger with.
I feel like The Office should release a book that's just Schrute lore. NBC should do this, and they would make all of the money. But meanwhile, up in Philly, Jim and Darryl get a chance to hang out with the real Ryan Howard, and this whole thing goes off the rails real quick.
Half biopic, half superhero movie. The mild-mannered professional baseball player Ryan Howard hits a home run into outer space.
There is a little subtext at the beginning of that plot line in which it's maybe being shown that Jim and Pam are losing touch with one another, but we'll get into that during the deeper meaning. Oscar and Angela sync up about how much the documentary crew caught of their various affairs, and the two end up calling the senator to give him a heads up about being exposed.
Hey, I get the sense you're gonna be outed as gay.
Yes, and I cheated on you with Dwight. I didn't tell you about it.
He was dressed like Ronald Reagan.
He was dressed like Ronald Reagan!
Smacks good. I really feel like you can almost see Angela Kinsey break character for a second after she smacks Oscar. Meanwhile, at Brian's, Pam discusses with the boom mic operator whether or not Jim has changed, which kind of comes out of the blue, but it's not because she's emotional after seeing the old Jim and Pam. Now she changes the subject to what the film crew may or may not have caught during these private moments. And Brian says this.
How much stuff you got?
Pretty much everything.
And Pam's like, well, what if we took off our microphones? Why were we wearing these things the whole time? And, Brian's like, boom mics exist. That's what I do.
Hey, boom guy, when are you gonna boom me?
But basically what Brian says is that they were really good at spying on them. And watching this, I'll just show this clip.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Oh, no, hang on a second. Pam, I'm sorry. I can explain this so much better.
I think you explained it.
I don't think I'm crazy here, but I feel like something is missing. Like, it's not thoroughly established what she's so upset about in this moment.
No, you're not crazy.
Like, he just said that they have parabolic mics, which they should know because this whole equipment room exists. And it does make me wonder if something was cut from the scene, as in, they go from this kind of dramatic conversation, she quickly changes the subject, and then she storms out like nothing ever happened. And he's like, I can explain it better than that. But he didn't really explain much, and he kind of did explain it pretty simply.
Everything.
And then all of that makes me wonder, what was the legality of any of this? Like, Ryan Howard walks in straight into the athlete office, and he plays to the cameras instantly. Great bit, enjoy it, good, fine. But now that we're asking the questions, there's waivers involved in anything you're going to do where you're going to go on TV. You sign the little waivers that say, I agree for my likeness to be used for your profit. But like somewhere in there, those waivers would have to say, just so you know, we're going to get access to everything we can. We are going to watch you while you're like in the bathroom every now and then, or we're going to watch you while you're, doing it in the office, or we're going to watch you at your home. We're going to follow you everywhere we can. And if you get another job, Jim, we're going there too. It's weird. These are not things I would have thought about until this documentary thing got injected as a story element, because I was pretty comfortable just thinking this is just the format of the show. But now it's a thing. And so I have questions. But Andy is dealing with all of this in his very own distinct way, and maybe focusing too much on community engagement.
Ah, damn it! I'm about to lose my freaking mind! Screw you, Texas Poon Tapper!
which I do think is a good use of Andy in this moment.
Where's my freaking phone?
Nellie ends up being the one trolling him, which is great, and I think I use this clip more than anything else throughout all of the field guides. I could be wrong. Maybe that's what she said.
That's what she said.
And then back to Dwight, he's about to back out of this deal once Clark gets in his head about how the Brussels sprout farmers are just using him. And then Esther goes against her father to help Dwight in that deal to save him $1 and ends up saving the relationship for a couple more weeks at least. Yay. I don't hate this relationship with Dwight and Esther. I just hate that it's so late in this series. And on rewatches, you just know there's no stakes here.
Post-hole digging.
So it doesn't feel worth watching. But we'll get into that in the ratings. For now, let's dive into the deeper meaning.
What does a bean mean?
Someone please explain it to Kat.
Right, so I talked about this earlier. I think that this episode may have had some scenes left on the cutting room floor. So I'm going to admit up front that I'm going to be using a little bit of my headcanon of what this story is actually intending to show. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. I'll talk about some of the more things that I think were cut from this episode later in this field guide. But for now, all three plot lines, Tractor Bait, Awkward Ryan Howard, and Promo Fallout overlap through a consistent theme of self-awareness and personal identity. Each character is grappling with how they are perceived both by themselves and by others, and this causes a lot of internal tension as the main dramatic thruster for each story. Dwight, for example, is struggling with whether or not Esther's really in this relationship for him or just his beat money.
I'd be one of those gold-digging tramps you read about that try to bag a farmer.
And thus the entire story is a resolution for him to say, no, she does like me for me. Angela and Oscar have to face what the promos are going to expose about their behavior over the last year and how those actions will bring consequences to not only themselves, but to the senator, whom they both still care for some reason.
You suck. These guys care about you, and you're just using them.
That's like almost as believable as Phyllis getting water dumped on her. Now, Stanley's also in the same kind of boat where he's afraid of getting exposed. Earlier in the episode, he is eating a pretzel, and I'm not sure if that was like a pretzel day reference.
Some of us have changed so much.
We've all changed.
It could be, based on what I'll talk about here in a second. Andy is one of the least self-aware people in the cast of characters here, on average at least. And his personal identity is mostly defined by how he thinks people perceive him. And calling him gay is quite triggering.
Because you're gay?
Who told you that?
All of which leads us to Jim and Pam, and that's always the case for season 9, Deeper Meanings. Jim's story is a bit awkward in this episode. For one, it's because there is no resolution to this story. I think it was probably cut for time. So alone, it doesn't really relate to the rest of this episode and its deeper meaning until you watch it as a mirror of Pam's story. They begin with this awkward phone call in which it suggests that Jim has been gone for days, if not the whole week. And these two running out of something to talk about is in itself something that should be like instantly aware for anybody who's been binging this season, because them being able to talk on the phone is like a staple of their relationship.
Would I make that up?
Yes. Fancy New Beasley would make that up. New apartment, new stories.
Oh, yeah, my fancy new apartment.
I keep looking up to say something to you, and then Michael's there, and it's horrible. Anyway, I'm bored. Come back.
We wanted to stay on the phone all day, but the company has a policy against 8-hour personal calls. So we're not telling anyone.
What do you want on your coffee?
Sprinkle of cinnamon.
Lots of phone bits for them. From there, though, Pam learns of the promos, which instantly has her thinking about her past. On the other hand, Jim is not aware of any of that, and he's only focused on what's ahead of him. While Pam navigates the day investigating what all the film crew actually captured, she's a little rattled with what she perceives as an invasion of privacy, but in the end, she's actually collected herself and actually hopes that they caught more than what she's seen so far.
I hope you got sound on everything. I'd love a DVD of that.
One could say that she probably wants to hold on to what she and Jim had back then. Jim, on the other hand, is fully entrenched in this career, seeming to be drifting away from Pam and his family. And while this friction has been growing throughout the season, Jim's always been shown to be in his comfort zone, like to be very home in Philly and in this job. And it's like where he belongs until this episode, because this is the only time we get a plot line where something negative happens to Jim. On the surface, he and Darryl are just trying to secure some new athlete endorsement for their company. I think. I'm still not 100% sure what they do here, but...
With our firm, you'll be building equity for long after they retire your number.
That's so athlete.
Mysterious.
But the awkwardness of this meeting, which really should be the highlight of their day, getting to meet like a sports superstar, Jim's is like super awkward and uncomfortable and really purposeless. And Jim's discomfort therein is maybe intended to show us, based on Pam's resolution, that Halpert, while this job gives him some meaning and purpose, maybe rubbing elbows with professional athletes isn't everything he thought it would be. It could even possibly be read that there could even be a little bit of symbolic parallelism happening with how Ryan Howard is kind of a duck out of water, that Jim should be sticking it out with Pam back in Scranton. But that might be reading more into it. I feel like we need to know the resolution of this story. But if you take everything from this episode, it demonstrates that in some ways being forced to look at yourself from an outside perspective can really mess you up. It can jog one's own sense of personal identity. We all think of ourselves in a certain way. We have an image in our minds of what we look like, because most of the time you only look at yourself in the mirror. But every now and then, walking down the street and I see myself from a different angle, I'm like, nope, don't like that.
Nope, don't like that.
Or how I put myself on the internet and I get comments all day. Nope, don't like that.
No, don't like that.
Point is, we all have things about ourselves that we don't like. Physical aspects, emotional aspects, all of the aspects. Sometimes getting that outside perspective forces us to deal with aspects of ourselves that we don't like. Or we don't like thinking about, at least. Which is all kind of basic and simple and not a bad message. Not a bad message because sometimes, like Andy, it doesn't matter. Most of these things don't matter. In Angela and Oscar's case, it very much does matter. Where I think this episode excels is calling out Pam's pursuit of recapturing what the cameras captured all those years ago. I think that is a really pretty sentiment, albeit none of this episode's very deep. So with that, we're going to rate this thing.
This is the worst.
That makes great TV.
Cold opening is edgy, dated the episode. It's a bit too unrealistic, and yet it does have a pretty punchy finish. It's good. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Makes me chuckle. As for the episode itself, there is some legwork happening to pull us into the end game of The Office. There's an Angela, Dwight, Esther triangle that is rushing to a resolution. There's an Angela, Oscar, and Senator story that has some wrapping up to do. There's a deep plot line for the season that's kind of exploring what Andy sees as an actual purpose in life. There's a documentary angle that was officially introduced in the previous episode and maybe foreshadowed in the premiere of the season that is going somewhere. And then there's the Jim Pam drama. And on one hand, it's kind of striking that there's so little time left. And yet, in my head, everything wraps up so nice and peacefully. It's going to be interesting, as I watch this with more critical eyes, how I'm going to feel about these next 5 episodes. Promos itself, though, excels when everybody is freaking out about the doc. It suffers everywhere else. These stories are really exciting. They have energy, they're driving to a nice tension, and even resolutions. The tractor bait story feels like a rainy day, and that's maybe because they actually seem to film this on the only day it actually rained in LA. The Jim, Darryl, and Ryan Howard stuff is humorous, but it's not, it's fine. I always find when you get a professional athlete into a situation, it's like the way people talk about it are, oh, he did really good for a professional baseball player. It's like, this is the biggest comedy of all time. You have 5 episodes left and we waste 7 minutes listening to a guy we've never heard from on the series just come on and be like, oh, this is my Space Mountain baseball player movie. Like, I get it. I think I get it, but I'm not 100%. I don't get it at all. Decisions were made. People got paid. That's all I do know. It does seem to be intentionally awkward, and I guess that's fine. It's considered a plotline. Point is, I'm not a big fan of the tractor story, and I'm not a big fan of this Ryan Howard story. All of that is juxtaposed to the energy that's back at the office, which is fun and alive, and people are doing what people would do, given a little bit more exaggerated.
I show them when I want to show them. Who wants a taste?
Nonetheless, it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy that portion of this episode. I'll say this, that considering that this was only teased in the previous episode and then explored now in the promos episode, the concept of the documentary really saturates the mind. Like, it works in a way that I think is kind of interesting. The average viewers, like me, would have long ago forgotten that this was more than just the format of this show, was like this docu-reality thing. But now invoking the idea of an actual release of an in-universe documentary of these people does create not only a semi-compelling plotline for the rest of the season, but also makes looking back at the series in this episode kind of thrilling. You see it from another angle, which is maybe why The Office encourages rewatches. What is obvious in the front couple episodes of the series is lost for sure midway through, and then this episode reminds us of the whole road we've been on with this documentary crew, which works so well as a primer for the Jim-Pam drama over the next few episodes, and also works in context of this episode. I know I've said this a few times, but I really think that there is a lot missing from this promos episode, and they're so good at writing most of the time that it has to be on the cutting room floor. Things were maybe removed from this episode for time or possibly other reasons, and I can think that a superfan episode would illuminate this and potentially raise the rating a bit. If we had a resolution to Jim's story, for example, I think that would help understand what they were going for. If we had the full conversation between Brian and Pam, that would really help us understand some of the context for why Pam just stormed out of there. Maybe I'm thinking too much about it, but it really feels like we're missing something there. But I also could have used some more talking heads of how the different staff people are dealing with their newfound fame. And if we're just making up stuff, why not have other callbacks? Get other talking heads from different characters from the old days of The Office talking about the promo's release. I'm talking Carol, Kelly, and Ryan. That one lady everybody asks who she is on Facebook.
Does anybody have any idea what I'm talking about?
Robert California, Asian Jim, David Wallace, and Michael Scott. Such a sequence could have given some emotional weight and also levity as we look forward to the final 5 episodes of The Office. As it is, I give Promos, which is a fine episode, a 2 out of 5.
Ah, damn it!
But that's all I have to say about the promos. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you have to say. Anything you agree or disagree with this field guide. I was going to say video, this field guide. Leave it in the comments. Love to hear what you have to say. But I also want to thank everybody who's supporting this channel, which includes this growing list of fine folks, starting with our Dundies host, Amber Piercy, Anna, Dark Lasagna, and our Inner Circle members, Avery, Heidi in the Una, Valerie, Jackie Estes, Mooch, Yesher, and Native Penguin. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And if you like what we're doing here and you want to support moving forward and after The Office, you could support financially through Patreon or YouTube memberships, all of which goes to pay my editors, or you could just give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't. That also helps me a lot. Next week, we are going to be talking about Staremageddon. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. I'm already going longer than I expected. That's what she said.